So for my out of class activity, I decided to go to a conference on world affairs lecture. Normally, procrastination is not a good thing for me, but this time it actually helped me out because, as I mentioned in my social media challenge report, um, I actually am really interested now in how social media affects people because that was certainly an interesting and eye-opening experience for me. So seeing that they were doing a lecture on social media and how people identify in the social media age definitely got me excited. So I was glad that I postponed it till I could do that. So the seminar, the lecture was like putting the self in selfie, talking about identity in the social media age. It was a four-person panel, and they just kind of answered questions about the audience had about social media and how it affects us in terms of self-esteem and stuff. Um, One of the things that they touched on in the lecture was they discussed about how um, social media is used as like a platform or like a performance, almost like a stage, and it's an easy way for people to go out there and whether it's making a fool of themselves or entertaining people. That's part of the reason why it's such a huge draw for us is that we as humans we love to tell stories and we love to listen to stories, and it's been that way ever since we can remember. um, and social media is the perfect way for us to share our stories with one another. Share our stories with one another, um, and that's part of the huge draw towards it. um, but on the opposite side of that, so it's great in that aspect. Then they talked about how, especially with youth, how it's really easy to be judged by your peers. If you post something, you can have, prior to social media, you could have like a mental idea of where you were, in the social hierarchy. You knew how popular you were effectively, but nowadays it's, there's a little number, there's a little meter there that tells you just how popular you are. And talking about how it's, it can be hard for people, especially shy people, to either break into that social shell or get over the fact that maybe they aren't, getting the likes that they want. Um, but it also brings up, the idea of social media is used as an amplifier. Talking about when talking about like behavior, they discuss that how generally when you're on social media, people who tend to be nice in person are nice on are nice on social media, um, and then people who are generally bully or mean are mean in person, then they that amplified that on social media as well, and they tend to bully on social media. And I thought that was really interesting, because then at the same time they also said that peers on social media are more likely to call you out on stuff and kind of in a way almost monitor what you post and kind of have a say in how you represent yourself online, which I thought was really interesting that both of those things tend to happen at the same time. Um, Another big part they touched on was the idea of like being anonymous. For instance, like on Facebook you can't really be anonymous, but on Twitter and Tumblr and Instagram you can be anonymous if you so choose, or you can act under an alias or whatever. So people don't know it's you. I remember they talked about specifically. Apparently there was a Tumblr user named Pizza that became insanely popular, and she was actually a really shy girl from Australia that just had like a really good sense of humor that she never showed to anybody because she was too scared. But her post took off on Tumblr, and now she's like crazy famous for it. Which I think is interesting is that social media does provide such an opportunity for us to explore other parts of who we may want to be or feel like we want to be without having our current selves judged by other people. And then they, at the end of the lecture, they wrapped it up by talking about how they feel like social media is moving in a messaging based direction, which I think is really exciting because it's faster, it's more convenient. So they talked about is um, how using messaging apps where you just send voice back to each other, which I realize is basically just talking on the phone, but it's the convenience of having a text message with the speed of having voice call, which is just, it makes sense. And I really enjoyed this lecture, and I'm definitely going to be going to stuff like this in the future. So